So as everyone can see today, we're here to talk about the content flywheel and unlocking the exponential marketing impact. This is going to be about that content remix as it was displayed in the event. I am Angelique Dufine. I am the Lansing HubSpot user group leader. And joining us, like I had mentioned previously, is Nathan DeLong from HubSpot. And we are so very excited to have you here. I'm actually going to hand it over now to the expert and let him do his thing.
Right, absolutely. Well, so first things first, good to see everybody today. Thank you so much for joining on a Friday. I hope everybody has really awesome weekend plans coming up. I think we're a little bit on the tail end of it, but I will say Happy New Year to everybody as well. And today I'm really excited to walk you through sort of a big shift I think that's happening in marketing. And I call that personally our content flywheel. If you think about HubSpot historically, right, we've had sort of our contact or customer-based flywheel. I think that some of the tools that are being introduced now are really helping us build out what I would call content flywheels. And we're going to look today at how you can take that one piece of content, right? The thing that you've worked maybe all day, maybe a week on, whatever the case may be, but that pillar piece of content, and actually take that and transform it, right, into a scalable engine that's going to fuel your entire marketing operation. So the best part too, HubSpot is going to make it hopefully easier, faster, and more repeatable. I think that this really aligns to shout out to Josh and the question about the methodologies. I think that this really aligns with HubSpot's loop marketing philosophy, where we create, distribute, learn, refine, and let those insights really power our next content creation cycle. So remixing, that's the engine, I think, that spins that loop a little bit faster. So let's go ahead and, again, just talk about intros really quickly. We have Angelique, who is kind enough to invite me to present for this event. You've got myself. I'm a principal solutions engineer at HubSpot. A little bit about me, live right outside of Grand Rapids, actually in Allendale, Michigan. So for the folks joining from the east side of the state, hello from West Michigan. And really, it's my job at HubSpot to sort of act as a product expert across our different hubs. So today, obviously, we're focusing on Marketing Hub. I also was in attendance, right, and a presenter at Inbound in September. So it is definitely within my wheelhouse to talk about features like Content Remix within HubSpot and make sure that I can help you folks understand how you might leverage those or what you might do with them. So let's talk a little bit about loop marketing. This is something that HubSpot has released as of last year, and it's really talking about how do we have a repeatable way of creating and leveraging content and evolving the marketing motions that underpin that content. Starting with, of course, expressing who we are, right? Then we want to talk about amplifying across channels, right? So that is really where Content Remix lives. We've spent that time creating all of this awesome content. And the great thing about that, the content can be something maybe that lives on our website. It doesn't have to be something hosted on HubSpot. It can be something in a document. It can be images. It doesn't matter, right? The point is that we all have these libraries of extremely valuable content. And what Remix really does is it lets us amplify our reach based on that content that we've spent so much time sort of refining and putting together and creating. Some examples of that, if you think about it, you might have a blog. That blog post might become multiple social posts. It might become multiple ads. It might become a marketing email. a webinar maybe is going to become maybe 10 to 15 short video clips, or a white paper is going to become a series of newsletter emails. That pillar page on your website, we might take that and start thinking about how do we encourage folks who have converted on that page, like with some very targeted email follow-ups. And one thing I think to keep in mind too, content remix isn't just repurposing. It's not sort of taking that piece of existing content off the shelf and just saying, well, now we're going to put it here, right? Instead, it's really about creating momentum, where each derivative asset that we create is going to feed more traffic, more engagement, more data, and that's going to help us spin that content flywheel faster, right? So before we go on too, I do always try to kind of orient, like when we're talking about features like this, like what hubs are they associated with? So I think like probably on the call today, we have a lot of folks who have Marketing Hub in some way, shape, or form. Content Remix specifically lives within Content Hub in HubSpot. So Content Hub Pro or Content Hub Enterprise are going to be the hubs that unlock access to this tool. And of course, everything else that Content Hub includes with it, like landing page tools, brand identity, etc. And one thing, just out of curiosity, like for the folks who are in the chat, like how many folks currently have Content Hub Pro or Content Hub Enterprise? I'm always just curious. I'd love to see.
Our company only builds for HubSpot websites, so we experience this a lot with the clients we work with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
good. I like a lot of the raised hands. This is fantastic because you guys are actually then already ready to start making use of this. Now, if for some reason you don't see this tool in your portal, check your product updates. Check with your CSM too if necessary. And then let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how I would think about doing this, right? What we'd really like to think about is how do we take that one piece of content, turn it into many, get it out in front of folks so that we can multiply essentially our ROI on every asset that we create, right? I think the old model is very much content is kind of like used once and then maybe it's forgotten, right? We put together this really awesome landing page last year. That landing page, it was tied to a particular campaign, a particular effort that we were doing. Since then, of course, like we've taken down that landing page, that campaign is over. And in our old model, right, we're sort of spending all of this effort, we're expending all of these calories on content creation. But the trouble is that content gets left right behind once those campaigns are done. Again, we can clone those assets. We can certainly do that. But the issue that we then have is we have to spend all of that time again to sort of zhuzh them, right? Like get everything sort of reorganized, reoriented towards whatever our new campaign is, whatever our new outreach is. And additionally, too, I would say, when we are doing sort of like the clone and adjust and we're spending the time on that, we're doing those kinds of activities. The other thing that can happen too is sometimes we miss things, right? We might miss by accident something that would be really impactful or really helpful for whatever new audience we're trying to reach with that content when we're reusing it. And the really cool thing about a tool like Content Remix is not only is it something where, what might have taken us a day, it now can happen in minutes. And it also has this hidden superpower where we can, in our base content, include things like contact lists So if I have a list that I've built out in HubSpot or a segment, right, that I've built out in HubSpot, I can now take that and include that in my prompt for Remix. And that's huge because that allows me to even further target these materials to specific audiences if I want to do so. So, talking a little bit about how we might think about building that framework, we're going to first identify what is that cornerstone asset. We can either pull something that we've done before, and again, it doesn't matter where it lives. It can certainly be something that's hosted on HubSpot. It can also be something that lives on an external URL. It can be a PDF. It can be a text document. We'll look at all of the different content types that you can use with Content Remix in just a moment. But we find that cornerstone asset, and that's our foundation. And ideally, it's something that's deep, it's something that's educational, something that we have expended effort on and really gotten something great to start building from. The next thing is we're going to think about how do we extract key insights from that content? Like, who do we want to reach with what we're going to be building? Who do we really think that this is going to appeal to or apply to? And that doesn't have to be the same group that we targeted with that initial content that we had, right? That's the really wonderful thing is I'm sure all of you by now have lots of experience with LLMs and how we can prompt. When we're using Content Remix, we're doing exactly the same thing. So I can take that foundational content, that cornerstone asset or group of assets, and I can say, hey, when we make the marketing email for this, this is what I want you to say. These are the kinds of people that we want to hit with this. And then we're going to take that content, right? And we're going to think, okay, we have our foundation. We know who we want to reach out to. Now, what formats do we want to build? And this really, I think, is something that's going to vary from user to user to user, right? We might have some folks on here where you are getting a ton of traction from, say, landing pages. We might have other folks that are getting more traction with, say, social posts, or more maybe with their blog. It's important to think about that. So use your reporting in HubSpot, right? Or wherever you get those insights from to really start to understand what are the formats that I want this tool to repurpose my starting content into, because I really want to head for the things that are going to make the most sense, right, for my audiences. And then we're going to go ahead and assemble into our new assets. And we'll walk through that in a demo today, and we'll show you how easy it is to select the different kinds of assets that you want Content Remix to go ahead and generate for you. And then last but not least, as you're building these remixes and as you're using this tool, you might find that you have motions that you really like, right? Start with my starting content, and I love the one where we create 2 emails, a landing page, and a Google search ad. You can save those as templates, and then from then on, the only thing that you have to worry about is feeding Content Remix the original content. All of your prompting and everything else will still be there, and you can use that template over and over again just by adding new content at the beginning. Right, and some good channel tactics. Again, this is going to vary from folks to folks, right? Like, not all of us have exactly the same audiences. Not all of us see engagement across the same sort of resources, but think about, blogs, right? We might want to expand. We might want to promote that content. Emails, of course, we want to think about, are we going to maybe build some emails that we're going to then put into, say, a nurturing workflow? Social, again, great way if you're like sort of organically reaching out to folks, be it on like say LinkedIn or on Meta, like those could be those entry points, right? Back to other content, back to your site, hopefully getting those conversions. And you name it, right? Like the really great thing about Content Remix is we're not sort of shoehorned into, well, you can only create an email from a prompt, or you can only create a landing page. This is really sort of like that multi-purpose Swiss Army knife. And again, in addition to not just being sort of that one purpose, have AI spin up XYZ for me, it's also going to be informed by your own content, your own cornerstone assets that you want to feed into the tool. So let's go ahead and take a look at some different ways that you can think about this. So again, putting this into a framework, right? We're starting with creating our cornerstone content. That's our high effort. That's the thing that took me maybe all week, and that's the thing that say took me all week, and I had to go back and forth with Angelique, and we commented, and she told me that I picked the wrong GIF, and that I like maybe need to fix up my copy, and that maybe my text isn't really landing. So I spent a whole week putting that together. That's that high effort content. Angelique and I like agree this is the very best of the best. That's what we're going to be using to then remix into additional assets to help extend our reach. Because again, if I've spent all that time spinning up these really awesome assets, we want to make sure that they get out there in the world. And Content Remix is going to really help me by shortening the amount of time to now leverage that content in a variety of ways. And then finally, use your reporting. Use your reporting. Campaigns tool in HubSpot is an excellent way to group together assets, as you all know, and see how they are acting as a group, right? What is their impact as a group?
Hey, Nathan, I'm going to insert myself here for just a second.
Yeah, please do.
That cornerstone content, do you find that more complex, longer form content tends to act better as that cornerstone?
That's a really great question. And I think that one thing that we probably all see in our day-to-day use of AI, because I imagine everybody on this call, again, by now you've heard about ChatGPT, by now you've heard about Claude or Gemini. Like, the more context that you give any kind of AI tool, the better it is going to perform for you. And just like a fun example of that, I asked HubSpot to do a content remix, and my only starting content that I decided to use was this. And I said, okay, take this group of apples and make me a landing page, make me a blog post, make me an ad. Now, Content Remix is aware of settings that you have in your HubSpot portal. So it was actually able to generate things, but like my landing page was full of images of apples. But then it's talking about my fake company in my HubSpot portal is just, it's called Biglytics. And I pretend that we're a data warehouse company, like a Snowflake or something like that. So it created a landing page that said, organizations find so much use with the ability to coordinate and put together their data. But every image in the entire landing page was like, here's an apple, here's another apple, here's an apple. So absolutely, like little tests like that. And I recommend play with this tool, right? There's nothing that experimenting with this tool is going to break or going to negatively impact you. So play with it, but know that just like any kind of AI, Content Remix behaves the very best, and it's going to give you the best results the more comprehensively that you are prompting it.
I love that.
It's a great question.
I like that you had one locked and loaded, ready to go.
Oh yeah, like that was like one of the very first things that before inbound they let us play with, like, different tools and different features. And that was like sort of one of the very first things I did was like, well, what happens if I just give you like some random image? What is it going to try to do? More context, more prompting is better.
Thank you.
And then, Josh, like for your question, absolutely. We're going to look at that when we are looking at the tool. But essentially, what's happening when we are prompting with Content Remix, we're taking the prompts that you give and we are feeding those to our own models. So it's not like it's completely ignoring or rewriting your prompt, but it's more like it's taking your prompt, putting it in the envelope of our sort of master prompt, and then sending it off to the LLM and then returning the results. So the next thing to think about too, once we create content with Remix, I always say it's like the quickest way to get 60% of the way done with that content, right? Like the purpose of Content Remix, I would say, is definitely around shortening time to value when we are creating new assets based upon other long form or evergreen or high effort materials. But what it isn't going to do is make it so that I magically have perfect content that needs like no one to cast an eye over it. Now, just because of that, that doesn't mean that you can't further use, your content assistants in HubSpot, right? Like you're looking at the landing page, maybe the copy that Content Remix decided for that landing page, you want it to be shortened, or you want to change the tone, or you want to expand upon it. You can absolutely do that to sort of put those like finishing touches on top of things. The other thing I would consider is if you try this tool and you're finding that you like what it does for you, consider like adding that as a step into your content creation workflow. So before, where we create that blog post, let's say, and we all go back and forth and make sure that that's just how we want it. And then we just go publish the blog page, right? We publish that post. Think about like adding one step, which says, you know what, then take that blog post, use our blog to social template in Content Remix, and see if we can't come up with some really neat social posts to help promote that, right? So consider adding that step into your content creation workflows, just to say, we got something that we're happy with. Let's run it through Content Remix and build some additional assets off the back of it. And again, I'm a huge advocate of this. Organize those items into your campaigns, because I think that that's like sometimes a little bit of an underutilized tool in HubSpot. And it is just so powerful because we're going from that view of, I can see how this email performed, or I can see how this landing page performed, to now saying, I can see how this group of related assets are performing, and really track that in a little bit of a different way. And then one other thing to note, when Content Remix first came out, I was super cranky because it would only work with specific landing page templates. They had to be like sort of recoded in a specific way. They had to like understand something called scaffolding, which is basically like, hey, text goes here, image goes here. And it was just this big cluster jam. I didn't like that, because now it's like, well, yeah, you can use this tool, but maybe the landing page templates or the site page templates that you've built and you've spent all this time on, guess what? They're not compatible. Ha 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 ha. Like, Now, do know that this tool does support all landing page templates. Again, just making it easier to interface with and easier to bring in to your sort of day-to-day marketing workflows. All right. Let's go ahead and do a little demo of Content Remix. So first things first, do we have anybody in the chat who has not used this tool before?
Yeah, we have some people who are not currently on Content Hub.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, what I wanted to show you folks is, oh, I love all the I have nots. Okay, this is exciting. You guys, Josh, Madison, Ann, I hope that it looks good to you when we show it here. So I wanted to sort of start, though, in a settings page. This is really important. If you do not turn this on, Content Remix will not work for you, right? We have to give users access to the AI tools and features within HubSpot in order for them to utilize this. The only other prerequisite is make sure that you have Content Hub. This is where you will then have access to Remix. And Abigail, for your particular one, that could potentially be because you have not maybe migrated to, say, like HubSpot's seat pricing model or something like that. Reach out to your CSM. They'll be able to tell you exactly why that is. But don't make it force you into a corner and get into a trial. That could be a few different things going on there, and your CSM is always your best resource for that kind of stuff. The other thing that I really would highly recommend, this is required, okay? This is recommended. You should probably set up your brand identity in HubSpot. The reason why is because this kind of gives you one-stop shopping to control things like, what is the theme that you typically like to use for, say, site pages or landing pages? Also, what are logos that you tend to use? And most importantly, your brand voice. Brand voice controls how HubSpot sounds when it is generating content. And it is super easy to set up. All that you need is basically a writing sample. That writing sample can then be uploaded to HubSpot, and you can say, is this the correct personality? Is this the correct tone? You can see my brand voice does not include emission. I can add that here. And then things like, what are some terms to avoid? So I've told mine, never use the word awesome sauce. It's not professional. It's not something we want to see showing up like in any kind of generated content. And then also around sort of pronouns and things like that, mine is set, be very gender neutral, right? Use they, them. Avoid making any specific cultural or religious references. Try to avoid like idioms, slang, or anything that, if somebody is, for example, I think we have somebody on the call from the Netherlands today. I think we have somebody from the UK.
Yep.
So if I want to sell my Biglytics awesome data warehouse software in the Netherlands and in the UK, but all of my marketing content is full of things like, well, it's shiny as a penny, or it's easy peasy. And it's not going to make sense to that global audience. So I've asked HubSpot to specifically avoid doing things like that. And then additional context around your brand is going to be pulled from your website, right? So what is my industry? It is data analytics and services. What is the sub-industry? Well, business intelligence and data science, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We will tell you too if there's anything sort of missing. So for example, here in competitive landscape, I have not specified Biglytics' main competitors. if I ever want to do that, I can certainly say, well, what is my biggest competitor? Maybe it's Snowflake. I can go ahead and add their domain and then choose what are the areas that they're competing in. And that could be something like, data warehousing, for example. Okay, so make sure this is turned on. This should be set up for you to have the best time. And then here we are in Content Remix. I'm going to go ahead and actually open up a new tab here really quickly so that you can sort of see the landing page for this tool. Again, lives right under here, under Remix. First things first, like always, HubSpot wants to be super duper helpful, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to do any of these fairly common things? If so, click these buttons. It will let you start doing that. You will also have access to different remix templates. Now, there's some that sort of come out of the box, if you will, for specific purposes. If you're curious about what any of these do, just click Use Template. It'll pop up on your screen, and you can kind of see what it does. And then it will show you too, what are recent remixes that you've been working on, right? What are recent things that you've been working with? Manage. This is where all of your remixes live. You can give these names that are hopefully better than here in my demo portal. I tend to use these all the time. One really important thing, this is a demo portal. It is not nearly as organized as a real HubSpot portal should be. Again, just like with any asset that you have, remixes should have a naming convention, and ideally maybe something like this where we have date, name of whatever this is doing, any other pertinent information that's important for you. But even with my horrible naming convention, you can still see that we're getting like some helpful information without even opening up one of these remixes. So what kind of content is being plopped in? What is it exactly that we're creating within each of these two? Save templates, again, this is where if you find that there is a specific motion, a specific like remix motion that you are really liking and that is really helpful for you, saving that as a template makes it really easy for anyone else on the team to just add content, and then they're going to get those outputs. Within your templates as well, any additional prompting that you provide for any of these assets is going to be retained in the template. So, for example, let's go to this little guy. This is one that I like. First things first, I've added my source material. To give an idea of the kinds of source material that Content Remix supports, anything like you would expect, right? It's an LLM powered tool. It's actually powered, I believe, by OpenAI. You can look at our AI model cards to double check me on that, but I'm pretty sure this one is an OpenAI. So naturally, it loves working with text. That can be content that you have saved already within HubSpot. It can also, though, just be free-form text, a document, a Google Drive file. So if you are using Google Drive to store some of your maybe like campaign briefs and things like that, you can pick those up from here, or again, from an external URL. Of course, also accepting video, podcasts and audio, images, contacts. A couple ones that are special here: video, image, audio. What happens with these is HubSpot will analyze the content of those things. So it's going to look at what is this video about? Or it's going to say, what is this audio file talking about? Or for images, what is this an image of? One thing I would try to be really clear with people is when you are putting those base asset types into your remix, so like remember, like my apples, it is not going to say then, oh, this image, exactly this image, right? Or exactly this video is what I'm going to put into the content that I create. That is not exactly how Content Remix works. Instead, it's looking at that and it's going to use that as a basis for adding its own content in whatever you're creating in the course of that remix. So my exact image of these apples isn't what shows up as, say, like the image in the marketing email. There might be an image of apples, or it might talk about apples if I don't have my brand identity set up and it just has literally nothing else to go on. But this specific image isn't going to show up in what it creates. This is just being used to sort of cue and prompt the model. And then contacts. Super duper special, super duper like this. So for example, I have customers with high lifetime value. And when I'm adding a list like this into Content Remix, I can tell Content Remix, what is it about these contacts that I want you to queue off of? So I can help it, right? We might have like lists floating around that are like, these are all the people that are interested in product A. Awesome, awesome, right? Use that as a contact segment here in Remix, right? So that way we have things like, in this case, because these are high lifetime value customers, for high volume spenders. Okay, well, good enough. Like, it can pick up on additional things too about the contacts in those lists, but I always give it a help and include that description. With your starting content, you can have up to 6 things up here. So 6 pieces of content or lists or what have you as your source material. Then when you're creating stuff, when you're saying, okay, Content Remix, I want you to create an ad or an audio file or a blog post or a form, image, landing page, email, podcast, SMS, which I'm not signed up for in this portal, social, website page, CTA, or my own free form prompt, right? Whatever that may be. Those things are going to be informed by this stuff. And then, in turn, 6 things up here, 6 things on each layer here. And all that I'm showing with this particular one is you can have that first level of things that you create, and then you can create again off the back of anything that's been generated. So if Content Remix, if I say, you know what, make a landing page and now make like a follow-up marketing email, like if somebody converts on that. Within each of these pieces of content too, we have the ability to include our own prompts here as well. So what kind of landing page should this be? Or what do I want this landing page to include? This is where it can be sometimes super helpful to leverage an LLM that you might be using, or if you need everything to be all just HubSpot, fine. Use your assistant in HubSpot and say, I am working on a campaign for XYZ. I would like to prompt HubSpot to create a landing page associated with the XYZ campaign. Give me the prompt. That's a great way to get really good, really well fleshed out prompts that, again, the more prompting we do, the more context we're giving, the better this tool is going to behave for you. But that's it. Once it's gone ahead and created the content, you can say, do I like it or not? Maybe. Click Save and Edit an app. And then whatever that content is, we'll see if our power outage messed up my browser very much. Nope, did an okay job. Cool beans. That is the page it made. Do I love this particular page? Absolutely freaking not. I think this is a terrible, horrible page. Yes, that's where, Gina, you would include your URL. Yep. That's a really good point. Yep.
Josh also had a question about how contacts integrate with this. He wants to know, does it take any activity data of those customers or an AI active summary into account, or is it just looking at the segment name and description?
It's looking at the segment, the contacts on the segment, and the data HubSpot has about those segments, or about those contacts rather, sorry. So it's going to be sort of all of those things, right? So it's going to be looking for things on its own that are similar about those contacts. It also is going to be looking to you a little bit if you want to give it like, hey, this is the main thing I want you to find, right? This is like the main reason that I'm including like this particular segment is because they're all high value customers. And then the way that works.
Before we move on, Nathan, Josh has a follow-up. His root question is if it will consider content many of those are looking at in the generation process.
No.
Okay.
Nope. No. Specifically, the way this works, you put the segment into your starting content, right? HubSpot's going to analyze that segment and it's going to come up with that description. That natural language description that we have is what's going to be sent to Breeze as context. And then it's up to you to choose what to generate. The AI on the back end is being instructed to write for this audience as described, right?
These are great questions. Thanks, guys. I think that answered the question. Sorry to interrupt, Nathan.
Heavens to Betsy, no worries. Now, when it comes to those kinds of questions about what do folks like interact with the most, one thing that is really helpful when you go into your, and I think that you guys have probably found this already. I'm just going to pull up like some random segment, super easy one, because again, this is a demo portal, so I can't guarantee all these people are like customers and did something. It'll be a really small list. But if you go over here to performance, when you build a segment now in HubSpot, we're going to show you a breakdown of how folks that are on this particular segment have been interacting with you. So in this case, I can see from my current customers, right? Lots and lots of folks are engaging with social. Lots of them are engaging with paid search ads. That's like my cue there to say, when I do my remix, I might want to like say, if I'm doing one that's pointed at these people, it would be good to ask Content Remix maybe to make some social posts or make some paid search or potentially some emails too. Because those are really where I'm seeing a lot of that engagement for these particular people. And that's the really nice thing about this too. You can get like these insights and then use those to inform how you do that remix. And I will say too, I really like this now. This isn't something that HubSpot had before. It was basically like, here's your list of people. This tool is getting more and more powerful as far as like the kind of insights you can get even just on these segments. I also really like segment comparison, if any of you guys have done that. So for example, let's say I have my current customers and then I have this other one, customers with high lifetime value. HubSpot will give me things like overlap reports, comparisons between those two different populations. You can compare up to 3 at a time like this, but these are all great steps to do too when you're thinking about, yep, I want to do a content remix that's associated with a specific segment. What kinds of assets should I create? The segments tool is going to tell you that. It's going to tell you, hey, this is like what these people seem to be interested in. Yep.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you guys too. Like, I would love to, let's go see where we're at here. Did our demo. Okay. Let's talk really quickly too about best practices, like where I have seen people like being successful with this, because you guys would expect, right? As like a solutions person at HubSpot, I talk to lots of folks. I see lots of HubSpot portals, lots of use cases. I think that remixing frequently is a good thing. Because I can tell the content remix to make some stuff and I can go step away, or I can do something else in another tab. I can come back and see what it did. It's so low effort to get it to build stuff for me. Just use it often, right? Like use it once a week. Maybe build towards even like a goal. Like if I have one cornerstone piece of content per week, maybe I try to make an additional month of content out of it, right? It could be. The other thing, I think that the templates are very powerful and helpful. I think they increase speed, they increase consistency. And certainly if I have like a 2-paragraph prompt like that I've gotten for the landing pages, the template helps me retain that and use that over and over without having to sort of redo that every single time. Last thing is make sure that you are reviewing the performance of that content. So again, not to keep shouting out about this, but use those campaigns, because for me, these are really, really critical, where if I have all of these billions of assets that are associated with this campaign, this is what lets me kind of keep my finger on the pulse of how are those things doing as a group? How are they performing in total? And when I see this data coming in, it helps me start to understand, am I being effective with this stuff I'm making with Remix? So group it together and measure it together is super helpful. I think it's a super good like sort of muscle memory to build, that if we're going to make content, we should measure content. I know we're pretty close to the end, mostly due to my unexpected power outage. Again, I'm sorry, you guys, but I think we have time for just if anybody has a quick question that's really top of mind.
Josh has come back
Yeah.
in. He's saying, just to clarify, create a campaign for the remix process specifically and apply that, or Remix does that as part of the process. He's asking for clarity.
So for each remix you do, like say all of these assets, these are obviously all related together, right? Because they're coming off, in this case, a blog post talking about, we're really trying to push the idea that Biglytics is here to help you maximize your ROI. That's the reason why you want to store all of this data and be able to report on it. This would be something where I would take like all of these assets and I would say, hey, HubSpot, these all belong in, and maybe I create that campaign because I don't have one for it right now, but a campaign for maximizing ROI or whatever that may be.
Does that answer the question, Josh? Does anyone else have any questions while we've got Nathan?